Season 6 was arguably the season that had the highest expectations for any teams coming into Worlds, especially with TSM's dominating performance throughout the summer split. But we all know how that turned out. I've been Challenger since Season 3 and have been following the pro scene since Season 1, so I'm going to try to provide some insight that I gathered from playing solo queue at a high level for a few years now. These are the main points that I will be talking about in this video. 1. Team infrastructure. 2. Toxicity. 3. Solo queue itself. The main problem with team infrastructure in NA is that coaches don't have enough power to have any leverage in terms of handling the players. That's one. Another issue is that it's very hard to find a good lead coach since esports are so new compared to traditional sports that have been around for hundreds of years. You can't expect some 20-year-old that played competitively for a few years and then retired to be a good coach. Sure, there might be a few cases where it worked out, but the majority of the time, it just won't. To add on to that, most teams don't even have real subs, so players don't feel that pressure to perform or be replaced until the end of the split. There's a perfect example for this that came out recently. It's that video released by Team Liquid called Breaking Point. You can see that Locodoco has a really hard time portraying the authority that a coach should have. Now, this can be due to two of the factors that I talked about earlier. 1. Being a bad coach. 2. Not having enough power. Or a combination of these two factors. Now, in my opinion, Locodoco doesn't make for a good coach. He doesn't have the people skills needed to succeed in that role. But that's not really his fault. At least from my understanding, he signed up to be a content creator and not a coach. But the second point is also an issue. Disregarding whether he's a good or a bad coach, there's not much he could have done about it either way, because of how the team infrastructure is. Now, I'm not saying that it's entirely the coach's fault. There's arguments to be made for both sides about the whole Dark ordeal, but the point I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of room for improvement for how coaching is done in NA. So I'm going to move on to my next point now. Toxicity. I intentionally place toxicity within quotes. NA is notorious for being the region where the word toxic gets thrown around the most, and also for having the least competitive solo queue ladder out of all the major regions. Let's take for example the recent case of Rank 1 Tarzan being denied from scouting grounds for being too toxic. While I agree that he's toxic, I think Riot could have handled it better. I mean, he's not even banned, so that means that he at least is behaving within the game. They could have made him delete all of the toxic tweets and keep a check on him. And if they saw no improvement after that outside of the game, then they could have denied him access. Riot is known for having a strict policy against toxic people, especially during the light days. They're good at punishing toxic players, but they've never actually done anything to help them reform. I know that it's not their responsibility, but I feel like with how much power and influence Riot has, there's definitely a lot more they could do to help these players reform and improve the community in the process. I think that NA focuses too much on toxicity and political correctness, and it is definitely holding the region back in terms of competitiveness. I'm not saying that dead wishes and stuff like that should be allowed, but NA can afford to grow thicker skin. Just look at how much more competitive Korean solo queue is, due to people being more focused on actual gameplay rather than figuring out who is or isn't toxic. So let's talk about solo queue now. The problem with solo queue is that most, if not all, of pro players don't take it seriously. The main reason for that is that playing in solo queue is obviously very different than playing competitive. But that doesn't mean there's nothing to gain out of playing solo queue. On top of that, there's also no incentives for pro players to place high on the ladder right now. They're already on a team, and it's unlikely that they will get benched for having a bad solo queue performance. So they have their job secure for the most part, at least until the end of the split when most of the roster changes happen. This makes it harder to breed regional talent. Since pro players don't take solo queue seriously, getting high challenger doesn't have as much of prestige as getting it on other regions. Then for the same reasons, people that try hard are called toxic because any challenger is basically a meme fest and more about people trying to entertain the stream rather than actually winning. So I think there needs to be more incentives for players, and especially pro players, to get a high rank in the ladder. The jackets from Riot is a good start, but even then, I don't think they're exclusive enough. Maybe they should have done the medallion and jackets the other way around. Medallions for top 200 and jackets for top 10. I'm sure people would have tried harder that way, because more people care about the jacket than the medallion, I'm sure. Scouting Grounds is also another good move from Riot, so hopefully good things will come out of it. So that's it for the video. The goal was to create some awareness and meaningful discussion about how to improve NA as a whole in terms of competitiveness. So feel free to comment or send me a message on Reddit or Twitter if you have any questions or suggestions about it. Thanks for watching.